Greetings. This is Richard Taylor, author of Brushes with Death, and also the author of Wrongfully Accused, Rightfully Acquitted. I'm here with another Tuesday testimony. This Tuesday testimony, I'm going to get right into it, is about being wrongfully accused, rightfully acquitted. This testimony is the inspiration for this book, and the title pretty much says it all. This is a incident that happened in June of 2013, and a little bit of backstory about the incident, where I was falsely accused of rape, kidnapping, abduction with intent to defile, assault, and a couple of other misdemeanors, and subsequently jailed and tried for all of those allegations, and subsequently exonerated. But here's the testimony. At this time in my life, I was living in Norfolk, Virginia. I had just published my first book, Brushes with Death, The Blood of Jesus, which is also available online, Kindle, ebook. Both books are hard copy, whatever you like. But I had just published this book. I was also attending Tidewater Community College in Norfolk, Virginia. And so the staff and administration allowed me to have a book signing, a book talk in February of 2013, which was actually 3 months after I published the book, and also on my birthday, February 26th. So at this time, I was promoting my book, also doing a little community work in Norfolk, and also in Goldsboro, just using my testimony, the things I went through in that book to kind of inspire others, to kind of deter others from living that type of lifestyle. Anyway, I did the book signing, and it was kind of well received from the staff, administration, fellow students, and I got a lot of support. And at one particular event, I ran into an old acquaintance of mine. She was a friend of a friend who I was involved with about 10 years earlier. And we struck up a conversation. She liked some of the things that I was doing, and we began a relationship, or a quasi-relationship. We began to pretty much mess around. It was casual at first, and then it got kind of serious. At that point in time, I was involved. Still struggling with some issues, alcoholism and drug issues, but also I was involved with, several women at that time because of, I guess some of the things I was doing was attracting a lot of women, and that's part of why I think this happened, because God wanted me to really be living the life that I was promoting. I talked about earlier in the testimony about wearing a mask, and at this point I was still wearing a mask, claiming to be this reformed individual, claiming to be, so upstanding, but, still in when the lights go off and when nobody's looking, I was still, dipping and dabbing and indulging in a lifestyle that wasn't pleasing to God, but it also didn't line up with what I was saying out loud. So I think this was God's way of sitting me down for a moment and getting me back to him. So in this particular case, I was with her, and things started off fine. She would allow me to talk to other girls in front of her, but then as we began to get more close, she would start arguing and whatever. And one particular instance, I was at her house, and it was about 2 a.m, and we had just finished engaging in sex, and I got up with her, and I got on the phone with somebody else. And this particular night, what she would normally let go, she didn't let go that night. We got into it, and she tried to tell me to leave at 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm not leaving anywhere. And so she ended up calling the police, in which the police made me leave or whatever. So that was the end of it, because I've been in trouble with the law. So I figured once you call the law on me, like, there's no more salvation for the relationship. But then again, about probably 2 or 3 weeks later, she called, apologized, and against my better judgment, once again, I wasn't making the best decisions at this time. I got involved with her again, and we had a few more occasions where we got together, and it was just kind of off and on. It was kind of rocky. She was going through some things through her boyfriend of like 5 years. Her child's father had left her for another woman. As soon as he got out of jail, which she held him down all the time in jail, which sending him money and taking care of him while he's in jail, and then he gets out and, kind of does her dirty. And I met her at that point. She was kind of vulnerable, and once again, me admitting uh, my role in the situation, kind of, took advantage of that situation, and kind of let her on, play with her emotions, what have you. So this particular night, we get together, and once again we engage in sex, and an argument ensued about a previous issue we had argued about, and at this time, I really got nasty with her. I told her some things, I really said some things, I treated her and said some things that were really ugly, really hurtful, and I've been told that I can be that way with my mouth, and this argument was, it got kind of ugly. I called her some names. I had her. She was actually crying. Um, and I eventually left. I eventually left the house. Um, Walked off to cool off. Went to the store. It was a store, 7-Eleven, a 24-hour store. At this time, it's about 2 or 3 in the morning. Um, you know, and I came back, kind of apologized, kind of sucked up to her, try to make her feel better, but she was still crying and things like that. So I just told her, okay, well, I'm finna go to sleep. She was like, okay, you can go to sleep. I'm gonna iron my clothes and get ready for work. By this time, it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. She had to be to work at 6. So she starts ironing her clothes. I go to bed in nothing but gym shorts and boxers, and I probably sleep for about maybe 30 minutes. So I wake up to somebody tapping me, and it's 4 police officers standing around the bed, and they tell me to get up, Mr. Taylor. And they got me up, and I'm like, what's going on? It was like, put your hands behind your back. And I did. Of course I did it. They walked me right out of the house, didn't put me on any clothes, just shorts, and that was it. So they took me to the back of the car. The officer, actually, it's funny, the officer that had escorted me out the first time when she called the police was there, and he made a statement. Oh, she let you come back? And I was like, yes. Like, what's the problem? He was like, well, we're investigating a possible abduction. And I'm like, abduction? Like, I didn't do anything. He was like, what happened? I said, we had an argument, and that's pretty much it. He said, well, I will see. So they sat me in the car. And then as I'm in the car, I see about 3 more detective cars come up. They run in there like it's an urgent matter, and they kept me out there for about an hour. And then the officer came back out. He didn't say anything. He just drove me to the police station, and they sat me in the police station in a cell with no shirt, no shoes, no socks, just gym shorts. And anybody been in the jail cell, they know how cold it is. So I'm in there like this for like 8 hours. And so they finally get me out, and they take me into an interrogation room, and they say, okay, Mr. Taylor, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Why am I here? You tell us. Why are you here? Like, I don't know. They come back with the, all the psychological games they play. So I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, what's going on? What happened? That's what we're trying to find out. What happened? I'm like, okay. So at this point, I've been in there for 8 hours. I'm just trying to, get whatever is out. So I just tell them the beginning from the end of our 3-month relationship, 4-month relationship. I tell them all the details. Tell them what happened that night. Tell them we argued. Tell them we had sex. And when I said that, the male officer said, okay, well, was the sex consensual? And at that point, I said, yeah. And he said, well, that's not what she says. And so at that point, I really knew that, that my world had come crashing down. At that point, I decided, I said, okay, I'm not talking anymore. I don't know what this is about, but I didn't do anything. And so they went to the magistrate. She had concocted a story that I just walked over. I went into her house, busted in her house, raped her, held her hostage, and then fell asleep, which is pretty much If anybody, you know, just knows it, that that doesn't even make sense. But regardless of the fact, the magistrate swapped the warrants for, once again, abduction with intent to defile, kidnapping, rape, assault, and a couple of other misdemeanors. And they swapped the warrants, and they was like, okay, well, we're going to do a rape test on you, a DNA test. And at this point, my mind is churning, like, how can I prove my innocence? Because we all know that when in this type of situation, it's always your word against theirs. And there's been several situations where people have been wrongfully accused of that. So at this point, my mind is churning, and I tell the police officer, I said, okay, I'll take that rape test, but the only way I would do it if you swab my ears, swab my neck, swab my chest, swab my stomach, everything, because I remembered that during our sexual encounter, she was licking all over my ear, my neck, my chest, my stomach, and I hadn't took a shower. And so I was grateful for not taking a shower that day. So the lady obliged. She came and swabbed my penis, of course, and she swabbed my neck, my all the various parts of my body that I remember that she was licking on. And then of course they took me to jail. Anybody knows about Norfolk Jail? Dangerous criminals are housed on the seventh floor, and that's where they took me. They put me in a quote unquote Crip block, which was full of Crips. I'm not any gang affiliation, but that's just where they placed me. And so in this block, it was kind of small. It was about 12 guys in there. 3 of them was on trial for murder or attempted murder. 2 of them had already got convicted. One of them had 42 years. One of them had 35 years. They were just waiting to go to prison. So everybody in that cell was hardened criminals. Like, had already did like 20. One guy did like 26 years. He was facing another 8. And so I was in there with that. And if anybody knows anything about jail culture or prison culture, when you're accused or convicted of rape, you're actually like considered the lowest of the low. The guys are beat up, treated badly, whatever. And so me knowing that, I knew that I couldn't really go in there and discuss my case with anybody. Really, you don't supposed to discuss your case at all, because, people will testify against you just by you talking. So that was another thing that I had to hoard. So immediately, as I've mentioned before, when I get in those situations, I went straight to the Bible. I went to what I know. I went to my prayers, my fasting. And I just dug into the Bible, because I know that was the only thing I had. It was my word against hers. But I knew I can prove my innocence when the evidence came back. But nevertheless, they gave me a court-appointed lawyer. He came. He did the video little thing. He asked me my name, and he asked me he just asked me a couple of questions. He never asked me did I did it. He never asked me anything. And I'm trying to talk to him like, okay, what are you gonna do? Like, look, I did not do this. He was like, okay, well, whatever. And then so I'm asking him questions, and he takes it a couple of frivolous information. Hey, what do you do? Did you go to school? Or blah blah blah. And I'm like, look, sir, I didn't do this. He was like, well, okay, we'll talk about that later. I gotta go right now. And he hung up the phone. And so that right there let me know that I was in it by myself. And so again, I started to pray. I started to fast and seek God, and really ask for guidance in this. So about 2 months later, it's time for my preliminary hearing, and which I'm being held without bond. Anytime that you're in jail with those things, you're being held without bond. So it's time for my preliminary hearing. About 2 days, I hear from this lawyer again. He comes, and he says, well, Mr. Taylor, they've offered you a plea, and I think it's a really good plea. I think you should take it. The plea is for 9 to 27 years. What a gap, right? 9 to 27 years. And, they might give me 9, they might give me 27. So I looked at him. I said, Mr. Sir, I'm not going to mention his name. But I said, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. Look, sir, I did not do this. You haven't even asked me anything about this case, about what happened, about how I can prove my innocence. And actually, in fact, last time you hung up on me. And he said, well, matter of fact, I got to go now too. And click up. He hung up the phone. And, he was the court appointed lawyer, the one who was appointed by the courts to defend me, to have my best legal interests at heart. So at that point, I was like, I'm not going to let this man represent me in preliminary. The preliminary trial is where you confront the witness, you ask questions to kind of, actually try to get your client off doing then to see if they got enough evidence to try. So when we get to court, Mr. Halleck, I said his name anyway, forget him, but he's in there, and I immediately tell the judge, I said, sir, I don't doubt his competency, but I'm not completely comfortable with him. He's not asked me any information. I would like to represent myself in this hearing, and of course the state objected. Oh, he has a lawyer, and the judge said, well, it is his right. I don't advise him to. It's not against his best interest, but he has that right. So he advised my lawyer, okay, you can help him out, but I didn't need his help because I know the question that I would ask her that she had to lie to if her story was going to corroborate with what she said, and I didn't know what she said, but I know that there were certain questions I could ask her because they had gave me a little bit of her testimony in the discovery, and so I went and asked her questions that I knew she had to lie to. The DA tried to make it hard for me by objecting to everything, but I did a pretty good job in pinning her down in questions on the record that could be corroborated by phone records and other records, DNA records, and time frames that she had to lie to in order for a story to be correct. So I get through that, and once again I go back to the cell. I'm in there fasting. I'm in there praying. At that point, I think I read the Bible. In those 5 months I was in there, I read the Bible back to forward and backward at least 5 times. It was a time for me to get closer to God. I was very, even though I was facing the rest of my life in jail, I was very, very, very close. I really learned how to pray. I really learned how to fast. I really learned how to seek God, because that's all I had. When you're in jail, for something like that, people already assume you did it because you're in jail. So people I was reaching out to was like, I told my mother to reach out to, some character witness, because once again, when you're in jail, people automatically assume you did it. Just the mere mention of that word sounds guilty. The mere mention of rape was like guilty. Even one of the jurors, when they selected, it was like, when I heard what he was charged with, because I thought he was a lawyer in his suit, but when I heard he was charged with that, her first reaction was, oh my, how could he do something like that? Not, okay, he may be guilty, she may be lying, how could he do something like that? So that's what I was facing. Long story short, about a month later, the lawyer wanted to get me to continue the case until January. By this time, it's like September. The case is scheduled for trial in November. Now, I studied the law and everything. I went to the law library, and I knew that in Virginia, if you're being held without bond, they have to try you in a period of 150 days. If not, they have to let you out. And so my lawyer wanted to continue the case to January, which would have been like, about 200 days. So I was like, no, first of all, I didn't do this. I'm ready to get this over right now. I want to invoke my right to speedy trial. And also, if I would have continued it, that would have negated my speedy trial, because the only way that speedy trial, that 150-day limit, is negated is if the client asks for a continuance. And that's what he was trying to get me to do once again. And so at that hearing, I was like, okay, I'm going to fire this guy, because he hasn't asked me anything, he doesn't know anything. So at that point, when we went to court that day for the continuance, he asked for the continuance. First of all, I objected. I said, Your Honor, I don't want a continuance. I want this handled immediately. I'm being held without bond for something I didn't do. And then even the judge looked at it. He said, yeah, Mr. Halleck, if you continue this, you're going to be past the 150 50 days, which he has the right to a speedy trial. So we're not going to do that anyway. But I'm also going to grant his request for another attorney. And this is where, once again, God steps in and gives me favor. He gave me one of the best lawyers in Norfolk, B. Thomas Reed. Shout out to B. Thomas Reed. He was normally what they call a paid lawyer, which is one you have to retain. But this was his day that he was supposed to accept the pro bono case, and my name came up. So I was blessed once again with a lawyer who really was serious about his job. So when I got back to the cell block, I told some of the guys from Norfolk who knew him who I got. He was like, "Oh man, you got Reed. Oh man, you good. You good. You got B. Thomas Reed." So that made me feel a little better. But what made me feel more better is his actions afterwards. Instead of the phone call, like the video call that most lawyers did, he actually about 2 days later, he came up to the 7th floor, took me in a room by himself, just me and you, no guards. He sat me there with him face to face and really talked to me, got to know me, asked me what happened, asked me how could he help me. He even told me how his daughter had overdosed from drugs, and so he really got intimate with me, and I realized that, man, God is good. God is good. So he asked me what I needed. I told him I needed all of the testimony from her to the police, from her to the medical examiner, her her testimony to the detectives, her testimony to the DA, all of those. I needed the phone records. I said I also needed the DA record, the DNA records. Now, I asked this previous lawyer for all of that for like 3 months. He said, I can't get it. I can't get the phone records, such and such. I can't get the motion. I can't get. He told me he couldn't do anything. Mr. Reed got me everything that I needed within about 2 weeks. He got the phone records, which Mr. Halleck said that, there was no way he could get. He got me the motion of discovery, and he got me the DNA evidence. And so I got that information, and I just poured through it. I poured through. He got me the preliminary transcript in which things that was in there contradicted from what she told the detectives, from what she told the medical examiner, from what she told the prosecutor. Like, I outlined everything. I went through line for line and showed how she was lying. She said she didn't talk to me for 2 months before the incident. Like, all of the phone records were saying like constant contact from her to me, mostly texts, phone calls. So I got the information. I just outlined everything, how she lied about this, how she lied about that. The DNA evidence came back that all of her DNA was on my ear, my neck, my chest, and at the trial, the DNA technician said, okay, this content of DNA comes from saliva, so if somebody's raping you, you're not licking and kissing on them. But nevertheless, he got me all of the information I needed, and so finally it came for the trial in November, and I was really stressed once again, because you never know. We've all know stories where guys have been convicted of that crime, and then 30 years later, it comes up where they are innocent, but they've did 30 years. So I didn't want to be in that position. So I went to trial. It was a week-long trial. As I stated, some jurors already had presumed me guilty just before hearing any testimony, so they had to exclude them. But one thing that let me know that this is a very, very corrupt and just system, because the day before the trial, like at the trial, before we pick the jury, my lawyer comes in. He said, "Well, Mr. Taylor, B. Thomas Reed," he said, "Mr. Taylor, she's offered you a pretty good deal. I mean, like, for real, like, I mean, honestly, I would take it." He said she's going to drop the rape. She's going to drop the kidnapping. She's going to drop the abduction. She's going to drop the abduction with intent to defile. And the only thing you have to do is plead to the felony assault, and you get time served. You walk out of here today without a trial. 5 months time served. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. Now, normally a guy would, probably any other person would have had. But first of all, one reason why is because I was already on probation for an earlier drug charge, which I will tell you about in another testimony. And even if I would have pled guilty, I still wouldn't have got out of jail because that would have been an automatic violation of my probation. So that's one reason. But also, I told him I didn't do it. I refused to plead guilty to something I didn't do. So I asked Mr. Reed, I said, well, why is she offering this? And excuse my language, but he said, because she knows it's bullshit. She knows it's bullshit. And that let me know something about the justice system, because she knew I didn't do these things, because it was obvious, just like from all the conflicting stories, the evidence just proved she was lying. I was like, why would you even take me through this trial? But I realized her job as a prosecutor is not to seek justice. Her job is to get a conviction. So she was willing to let me out, which she knew I should have been out anyway, but let me out with the conviction. So I said no. So basically I said, we're going to trial. And we went to trial. The same lady who was just about to let me walk out the door got up there and presented me as some monster, some rapist. And I was like, can't we even, I even told her, I was like, well, can't we just tell the jury that she just tried to give me a plea to let me out? But he was like, no, we can't do that because that goes against ethics. And I'm like, so I'm really not understanding. But nevertheless, we got on, we went to trial. They put her on the stand. All of her stories didn't add up. He caught her in so many lies. He asked her questions. Oh, you didn't talk to him? No. Well, ma'am, look at this right here. The phone records, this is you texting him. This is you calling to him. This is... Oh, you didn't talk to him that night? He just showed up at your door? Well, here's a text right here. Here's a call from you to him. 30 seconds. Is that when you went to pick him up? Like she said. So pretty much, and then when he asked those questions, she's just like quiet. And the jury's looking at her, and then, once again, the DNA came back where, her saliva and everything was all over my body. So it got to a point where it was almost comical. But, once again, there's still that chance. So the trial lasted 4 days actually. So that Thursday I went back into the cell, and it's about 12 o'clock after the testimony's done, and I'm just sitting in there. I got my Bible, I got my Psalms. I had ripped Psalms out of my Bible, and I'm just reading Psalms all day. I'm speaking Psalms. I'm praising, singing old hymns, because I really don't know. I'm thinking, what if they convict me? My life is over. So I'm in there praying. Come to the end of the day, they bring me back in court. I'm nervous. Okay, they didn't reach a decision. And I'm like, what? Yeah, they're still deliberating. So I'm like, man. I'm like, okay, well, in my mind, I'm thinking, what is it? 11 for me, or 11 against me and 1 for me? You know what I'm saying? Or is it 10 against me and 2 for me? Like, what is going on? So that night, of course, and the whole trial, I fasted. I didn't eat anything. The whole 5 days, I had a massive headache the whole 5 days. Probably had something to do with the aneurysms I talked about in the last testimony. And that night I couldn't sleep. I prayed all night. I just cried out to God, Lord. So that next day, I'm crying. Once again, I'm in the holding cell. For them to deliberate, so I'm in there about 12 o'clock, I'm praying, go, Lord, let them be deadlocked, Lord, let them be deadlocked, I'm praying that prayer, right? So, and then Mr. Reed comes and I'm like, okay, when I know that, when juries are deadlocked, like how long do they let them, be deadlocked before the case is declared a mistrial? He's like, I said 2 weeks. He was like, no, man. If they don't come with, a decision, not in Virginia, if they don't come with about 2 days, you're gonna be, nah, we don't do it that long here. So, but then again, like something hit me. I'm praying for the wrong thing. I was like, no. So I started praying, Lord, no, let them find me not guilty. Let them, I changed my prayer, you know what I'm saying? Because once again, I knew I was not guilty, but my faith was like, Lord, just let them be deadlocked. I was like, no, let them find me not guilty. So Long story short, they came in and said, Mr. Taylor, we ready for you. I mean, I've never felt so much, just like grief. I can't even explain the feeling. And then I walk in the courtroom and it's like 20 deputies in there. And so I'm like, ah, man, they found me guilty because they know I'm probably going to act a fool, and try to escape. So there's 20 deputies in there, my mom and everybody who was in there supporting me. And they found me, of course, not guilty on all charges. They read out the first charge and I just broke down and started crying. And, what's sad is me, like, the girl just walked out of the courtroom smiling. Like, and all during the trial, like, she was over there with her friends just laughing and joking. I'm like, this girl really has me on trial for my life for something I didn't do, being vindictive. So, I'm just thankful that God, once again kept me through that situation that I pretty much put myself in by being promiscuous, by being, wearing that mask, as I talked about earlier, wearing that mask as an upstanding citizen, as a representative of God, but still living, denying that power of thereof, as the scripture said. So, I got back to the cell, and at that point, they had moved me to a blood block because I got into a fight, which also probably has something to do with my aneurysms. But when I came back in with all of my little information, my folders and everything, I was going, a week, every day I come back. How'd it go? Because people don't like to go to trial. Like, people are scared to go to trial. That's why, 95% of cases ended up in plea bargains. So when I told those guys in there, all those killers and dealers, like, that I found not guilty, like, then everyone ran to me with that paperwork. Like, look, man, could you help me out with this? Could you help me out with this, man? And I realized that a lot of those guys, even though they may have been guilty, some may haven't, but they had a legal basis where they shouldn't have been convicted. But for a lot of them, it was too late because a lot of them had took pleas. But, and then, like, I was about to get out anyway. Like, I mean, it took about 10 hours for them to process me out. Like, they put you in real quick, but they get you out, it takes about 10 hours. So I talked to a couple of the guys, and I realized that, yeah, man, you probably could have beat it if you took it to trial, but a lot of cats ain't taking the trial. But, it's just funny when the justice system is set up like that, where, you got these court-appointed lawyers who are there just to get convictions. Like, most court-appointed lawyers do work for the state, and this is not to be taken away from it, but that was just a testimony where God had to sit me down, and I had never been that close to God. I learned how to pray, learn how to fast. I really learned how to seek God's face, and I really learned that God will sit you in some places. He will put you in certain situations to get your attention. And once again, that's one of the many attention getting situations he had placed me in. But I'm so thankful that things didn't go the other way, because I know there's probably thousands of men sitting in there wrongfully accused of things like this. And once again, there are some guilty as well. And I don't take that crime lightly, but I definitely have experienced someone using that crime and using the stigma associated with that crime to destroy people's lives. And fortunately that I had God on my side, that I had a praying mother, the toll that it took on her. I mean, who there were people who I wanted her to reach out to, but once you're in jail for something like that, it's automatically assumed that you did it. Like, I gotta try to call people, and it was like, nah, because once you're in jail for something like that, it's automatically assumed that you did it. So I'm just thankful. If you do want the full in-depth story, I hope I didn't give too much of the book away, which is it is wrongfully accused, rightfully acquitted, Richard A. Taylor. Once again, it is available on Amazon, Kindle, ebook, and also you can get the Brushes with Death as well. But I thank you guys for listening to me once again. If anybody will support my work, I would definitely be grateful, greatly appreciated. And this is just one more testimony how God delivered me. And I got a few more to come, but I thank y'all for tuning in. If you do want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button and the like button. But once again, I thank you. I give all glory and praise and honor to God for bringing me through this situation and allowing me to be here to tell the story today. I pray for blessings and peace upon everybody who listens to this story, and be blessed.